I have not had as much international exposure, but I like to believe that there are other cultures that it's not so complicated. It's like, oh yeah, art is really important. It's just like a fact that's what you would do, is you would honor the arts and the artist. The artist is as important as anyone. But here it just doesn't feel that way. It feels like we can't sell it. We can't package it. We can't help people understand when there's no culture of support underneath that. That's my opinion. I mean, that's been my experience, is that I can talk to people, but at the end of the day, they don't quite understand, for the most part, why.
Welcome to Point to Rise, your podcast that gives you permission to dream big, take messy action, and turn your talent into profit while turning your back on perfection. My name is Susanne Puerschel, high performance and mindset coach, former international ballerina, profitable entrepreneur, and founder of Point to Rise, a movement designed to empower dancers. It is my mission to use my own story as an inspiration for today's generation of dancers. And now sit back, stretch, warm up, or sip your coffee and love learning how much it matters to point at yourself first to rise to all that you are capable of. So welcome to another episode of the Point to Rise podcast. I am in New York today, even though this episode will launch a month from now. However, I am meeting up with Sarah Shoemaker today. Now, Sarah and I go way back, and although we never were on one stage together, we were always looking at each other as I wish I would have what she has, as dancers, as artists, as wherever we were at that point, early 2000, when we actually crossed paths. So a little bit about Sarah. Sarah Shoemaker is nearly 30 years in the professional arts world, begun in 1992, working for the Tennessee Performing Arts Center in her hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. In 1994, Sarah Shoemaker received a contract to dance with the Charleston Ballet Theater, where she performed for 4 seasons. In 2000, after completing her bachelor's in business administration from the College of Charleston, she accepted an administrative position with the Augusta Ballet. Her evenings were spent teaching and choreographing for various groups in and around Augusta, Georgia. In 2004, she was invited to launch a dance program at Ainsworth High School in Nashville, Tennessee, and later served as the director of dance at Brentwood Academy. While in Nashville, Shoemaker began acting in independent film, TV, and commercial projects. She stopped acting when she moved to Greenville, South Carolina in 2014 and began producing the documentary film Invitation to Dance, which has won several film festival awards. Shoemaker currently serves as an executive director of the International Ballet in Greenville, South Carolina, and is producing another short film with her husband and choreographer, Thomas Shoemaker. It is called Just Let Go. She is a mother of 2 beautiful children, a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son. So hang tight. This is going to be a great interview. I can't wait to dive into her journey from 21 years ago, where we last parted. And without no further ado, here's Sarah. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to reconnect with you. As I said in my intro, it's been quite a few years since we parted and moved away from each other, and now finding somewhere each other back. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. I know your schedule is full, so the more so I'm grateful.
Well, thank you. I'm only here because I'm a fan of what you're doing, and I believe in what you're doing. I was so pleasantly surprised when I saw you connect with Philly, and it was like unicorns and rainbows in my head of just the joy of seeing 2 people that I respect and love and knew kind of a lifetime ago fast forward all these years and to see not only kind of her journey into retirement from the performing side, but to see your journey into this new evolution of giving back to the people that we were when we were all together, to that age group. So I loved watching that podcast. And then, I don't know, I just felt like if Susie ever, wanted to hear from sort of the business side or a side of this, of the evolution when you leave the performing side, early, because I stopped dancing when I was 25. So there was like just a sliver of a performing career, but then everything kind of that fell out after that. I just thought, I could speak into those things if that were to ever be applicable to your audience. And I guess that's why I'm here, is I could speak into that. But I just want to say thank you, because I think you're doing incredible work. And I hope that that people are really allowing themselves to be poured into from your experience and your advice, because you give amazing advice.
Oh, wow. I think I need to go and take that in. Do you know, when you get a compliment, it still feels not uncomfortable, but worse. I tend to say, oh, I'm just going to take this in. So thank you. That is such a beautiful gift. Yes, I do want to get into the business side. Yes, absolutely, because that's my jam, besides all of the other things. But what I really want to start with is that I'm finding this common thread between performing artists and regardless when they stopped and when they pivoted, once a dancer, once an artist, you always have that in you. It's in your blood. So I would love to know your journey. I would love you to share, not the journey altogether, because I highlighted that already, but what made you start? Like, what was that spark, that whisper? Where did that come from?
I mean, I can't even remember. It was the, when you're exposed to ballet as a young person, whenever that is, if that's in your blood, it's just going to be like an instant thing, and you'll never remember a time before that. And for me, I mean, I don't remember this happening, but my dad says that he saw something on PBS, public television, when I was like, 4 or 5 years old. He thinks it was Baryshnikov. It may or may not have been Baryshnikov. I don't know. Could have been Nureyev. Could have been any big star. But somebody famous was dancing on television, and he called me in to show me what was going on. And he says that is when it started. He thinks he remembers that. I don't actually remember that moment, but I do remember from the time I could see my full length reflection in our glass fireplace. I don't know what you call it, but there was like a glass window in front of the fireplace. And I can remember dancing in front of that. And the glass was my full length mirror. So the fact that I could see my whole body means I was tiny. I was already looking for my mirror, my studio, or whatever. And of course, I had no technique, no language, no ballet shoes, nothing, but I remember dancing. So I think that instinct, that love of dance is something that is in different people, and you can't explain where it comes from necessarily. It's just there, and it's powerful. I guess it's like anybody's instinct for music or for art or for, any kind of expression that speaks to your soul, that connects you to something greater. You just do it. Like, you don't know why you're doing it, but you're just doing it because you're seeking something. So that was how I got into it. And then I do remember getting my first pair of ballet shoes when I was 6. And I remember the smell of the leather, and it was like paradise. Like, I can remember to this day, I can close my eyes and remember that new ballet shoe smell of the leather. And it was like, I have found this is my thing forever. And so like, that was the journey since then. It continues to this day. I mean, I'm 47 years old and I'm still working for a ballet company. So it can be, it can take different forms, but I think that power is just in me. The love of dance is in me. I've tried to get away from it, though. That's the other theme of my life, is that it's so hard to carve out a place that, I did try to leave the industry several times and never succeeded. So I kind of have surrendered at this point.
Oh my gosh. So I'm sitting here covered in goosebumps. So relating to every word that you're saying, because yes, it is in us. We just can't deny it. And the further we're trying to go away from it, the further we're trying to deny ourselves that is our calling, if you want to say so. the harder the nudges will get, and the pulling you back into the tightrope. So what were the things that you did that had nothing to do with the dance and ballet scene?
The first thing I tried to quit when I was 18.
How did that go?
Yeah, it didn't last. It lasted about a year and a half. But the benefit of that lesson was that I do frequently tell kids that if they're burned out or they're injured or they're needing a break, that it's okay. I mean, there's this panic of, oh my God, if I stop for 2 weeks, I'll be fat and I'll forget how to dance and I'll fall, it's over if I take. And I always say I quit when I was 18 for a year and a half. That's prime training. That's when it's supposed to be happening. And I was literally like eating Snickers and going to work and sitting at a desk. So, I mean, I was living an opposite of the ballet world life. And yet I still managed to come back and get a contract with a small ballet company. And I was dancing ballet and I was doing the thing. And it's like, how is that possible if it's impossible? It is possible. You can take a break. You can take a 2-week break. You can take a month break. You can take a 6-month break. You can take a year and a half break as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't advise it, but I would just say, let's not panic about breaks, so again, every person is different and their goals are going to determine what they need to do and not need to do. But just for your average dancer who isn't like destined for a principal career with, a big company, I would say, let's not panic. You can do it or not do it. You can break or not. So I'm glad I took that break because I feel like it's helped me to inform other people that they don't need to panic about a break. But anyway, so I came back at, 19 and a half and did, dance for that next few years. But then I tried to stop again and got a business degree because I was so tired of being a starving artist that I thought I would like to make money. And to me, getting a business degree sounded like the way to make money. But the first job I got after getting the business degree was working as the marketing director for another ballet company. But again, I thought I was doing that as a stepping stone. And it turned out to just keep me in the, my toe in the water enough that I couldn't really leave. I never wanted to go to a corporate, institution. I just couldn't leave. So from the marketing job, I ended up getting back into the studio and teaching and choreographing, and then spent like 10 or 12 years teaching and choreographing, which I actually did love. And I would still be doing that to this day, I think, had I not kind of gone through, like, I guess, another life evolution of, how do I say this? When you're evolving through your career, you hit these obstacles and you have to decide which path to take. And I ended up choosing to take a break from teaching. And then that is kind of what led me to really leave teaching. I did love teaching, but it was kind of a strategic choice at a certain moment. And I don't really regret it now, because now my job is to actually empower other teachers. So even though I'm not the one in the classroom, it feels really good to be able to support and endorse and do what I need to do to support other teachers. So it feels like I can live vicariously through other teachers now. But yeah, so it was like, and I acted for a while. I spent about 10 years acting, but I knew when I did that, it wasn't a career move. It was more like a hobby on steroids, So yeah, so I wouldn't say going into the acting world was necessarily leaving dance, because I was still working in the dance field, but it was just a detour to learn another side of art. And again, I'm really glad that I did that detour outside of the ballet industry, because the things I learned in the film world and the acting world are completely opposite lessons from things I had learned in the ballet world, and would have been really beneficial to know as a dancer. So again, now that I'm in my position here, I just feel like I'm able to use these different things to try to, encourage others when they get panicky about the ballet stuff. Because you can get panicky about it, you can obsess. And I've had just enough experience in other things to say there's no need to panic,
Okay, so so this is such a beautiful circle that you just described. Let's start with the permission to take a break, because I find you're completely right from both of our experiences, and saying that, people, younger people, even people in their careers in their mid-20s or 30s, are panicking when taking a break. if it's 2 weeks a day, or even taking a sabbatical to literally lean in and listen and to understand what is going on either with their body, giving themselves time to heal, giving themselves time to like take yourself out of the daily rut. Because when we can get accustomed to many things, and only do we realize whether or not they are serving us when we take ourselves out of them. So let's give our listeners really truly the permission that whatever your intuition tells you, whatever comes your way, it is the right thing. It doesn't maybe feel like it right now, but when you connect the dots backwards, it's exactly what you needed.
Absolutely. I would say this too, and this is going to sound probably a little extreme, but I don't mean to scare people or make an analogy that's too much. But I did watch recently on Netflix the Leah Remini doc. She does like a series on Scientology, and I was learning about like that cult idea and some of the things that they did to really force people to do things that they wouldn't normally have done. It was this like brainwashing kind of thing. And there were elements of that reminded me of the experiences of training in the ballet industry for so many years, day in, day out. It's not, and the thing is, it's not malicious. I mean, I'm not saying that this is an intentional malicious thing. It's just a byproduct of the reality of the competitive nature of it, the physical nature of it, the elite, like athletic nature of it. You put all these things together, and it just seems like, okay, well, what is required is this. And then the net result is you end up putting children into a situation where they're not prepared to understand that there's a cost to never allowing yourself a break, never allowing yourself to sort of think for yourself and endorse for yourself. You're just saying yes to the teacher every single day. And you're not only saying yes to the teacher every day, you're being given this constant, you're not enough message. So it's so tricky because we know as adults, it wasn't malicious. We understand why it was, but we also understand that if you don't take yourself out of it for a moment, then you're essentially becoming a brainwashed person for something that isn't necessarily going to help you as a human ultimately. For some, it will, because they're going to have massive success and they'll have, I guess, enough rewards in ways that it kind of like gives them freedom later to process some of this. But for the vast majority of dancers, I think they have to unpack it later. And you don't want that for people. You don't want to send them off into the world saying, I'm going to give you a lifelong job of unpacking the baggage that we created between 8 and 18 years old. Like that's not okay. So that's why I'm so proud of you and what you're doing, is because what you're doing is speaking into some real truthful elements that don't really get talked about. And so my struggle, and for me, the struggle is that I still work in the machine. Not only do I work in the machine, I'm the leader of a machine that still, preaches this system of teaching. And so I struggle with that, because I do want the kids that are, in the school that I run, to have their best chance at success. And I still do kind of have that voice in my head saying the best chance for success is you need to be dancing, 4 hours a day, and you need to do this and you need to do this. So it's like, I still have that understanding of it does take this amount of work to get there. But then there's this other side of me that goes, but Sarah, pull the lens back on occasion and, recognize that the ones that aren't going to be dancers are going to have to unpack maybe some of these messages. So it's tricky. It is very tricky. So I try to do it, in case you're wondering, well, what are you doing for the benefit? I try to do it in some of the messages, like things that I'll say to the dancers just in casual conversation. So it's not like I'm infusing a lot of things into the training to reveal mental health issues that might need to be dealt with. I'm just trying to have those one-on-one conversations that say, that are supportive of, like I said, taking a break. Like I'm an advocate for that. Or another example is just the way that I try to remind the kids as often as possible that there is no pressure in this. There should be no pressure in this. This should be joyful. Like, you should be experiencing joy, and you should be proud of the fact that you're helping others experience joy when they come see you dance. So those types of messages, it's maybe too subtle, but for me, at least I feels like it's something that I don't remember being said to me, that, that I remember it just being very much about like, I'm not enough. And I, will never really fit into this industry. And I just tell people, oh, you totally fit in this industry. I can't tell you where. I can't tell you what company you're going to be in. I can't tell you if you're going to be a teacher or a choreographer or a board member or a fundraiser or an executive director. Like, there's plenty of room in this pool for you. And it's going to be up to you to figure out where.
So that particular message, I think I want to highlight that a little bit, because it is not talked about. We put the end all be all, the goal of a lifetime to, stay on stage. And where I understand, of course, that is something rewarding and beautiful, but it takes so much more to, a successful company or creating the art, or even being involved in the art. There's so many more avenues that we can participate in. That, look at us. I mean, we tried to move away. I was heartbroken when I stopped dancing, because I thought I'm not going to recover from this failure or whatever disappointment. And yes, we will. We always will. We always will find a different way. Like, what is meant for us will always come back to us. And I now, looking backwards, really truly believe in that. And if that's something that we can give to every single one, is that you just truly have to lean into that, have the faith that what is meant for you will always come to you. You've given me so many little nuggets I want to tap into. Let's talk about joy. For the most important reason, I had to, a few years ago, describe what joy means to me. What brings you joy? And I did not have an answer. And to this day, I have the hardest time actually saying what brings me joy, because from the moment I stepped into the studio at age 10, joy was off the plate. Mm-hmm. Joy was no longer welcome. Joy was the enemy of me becoming a professional dancer, where now I know so different. And if we would have kept joy walking along with us, I believe that I wouldn't have to do so much unlearning now. And I also think that we are diminishing the capabilities of the dancers or the artists going into these professions. We're not allowing them to shine as bright as they can. Mm-hmm. Right. I'd love to, you particularly like your experiences, because you've been a teacher as well in that.
Yeah, I think, most of the dancers that I know currently, I think they would say that they're experiencing joy in the dancing. But I think if I could be, honest with some of them, I would say there's an element of what is the joy coming from? Is it coming from, just to understand, is it coming from the dancing, the participating in the dancing, or is it coming from the camaraderie? Because that's a joy. Is it coming from the attention? Is it coming from the accomplishment? Like, I would hope that, like I said, I think most of the dancers that I know right now, for the most part, of course, you always have exceptions, and you always have it's up and down. Some people might be joyful one day and then not so joyful the next day. But like, to help the young people understand that, understanding specifically where the joy is coming from is so important, because that is really the information that you can build on, not only for your life in terms of a direction or what your choices are, but also to not get lost and distracted by something that isn't really your joy. So for example, I thought that, being a ballet dancer would bring me joy. But again, like you said, looking back over my life, I can actually now say, no, I loved ballet because it was beautiful. I loved watching ballet. I loved celebrating ballet. I loved the music. I loved the way a class was put together. I loved so many things about ballet. I participated in it because it was of all those things, but I never got any joy from actually doing a variation. I mean, my least favorite class of all the summer intensives and all the classes, the class I avoided the most and just really did not enjoy doing it was variations. I never wanted to learn a variation. I hated learning variations. And the reason is because I wasn't actually very good at it. Like I just wasn't a principal. I would never have been the person doing the variation in the ballet. Do you know what I'm saying? That never would have been me unless there was literally no one else in the room to do it. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So if I was the last resort. So the joy, what I learned later was the joy was the environment, and the joy was the creation of something from nothing. And that's why like I ended up acting and loving acting, because it was like an ensemble, like when I experienced ensemble cast work, and then there was a crew involved right in front of me. Like there's the camera and then there's all the crew. I was like, oh, this is what I love. I love creating together. And I don't care if I'm in front of the camera or behind the camera or, whatever. Like, I just want to be involved in the process of creating something beautiful or cool or interesting or funny. And so my early life, it was like, I spent so much time thinking I was supposed to be a ballet dancer it's like, I kind of think if I could have unpacked what it was specifically earlier, then I maybe wouldn't have been so driven to become a ballet dancer. Not that I regret it, because I actually, I have no regrets of the little short career that I had. I learned so much and I met my husband. But I will say this though, that's like, when I look back, the greatest blessing from me dancing was meeting my husband. Like, it's not about the dancing, did I enjoy it? Yes. Did I learn stuff? Yes. But was it really the dancing? Not for me. It was never the dancing. So I would just say that for our kids, my kids under, my watch at International Ballet, just helping them realize that some of you feel like it's the dancing, and it might be, but some of you, it's okay if it's not. It's okay if you discover at some point that it wasn't the dancing, it was something else related to the dancing. That's a totally okay thing. It doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean that you are a failure. It doesn't mean that it was wasted. You don't know what the benefit is going to be, what the perk is going to be on the other side of this, but there will be perks, there will be benefits, and you will be joyful. It just may not be what you think the joy is. Because, it's very tempting when you're young, and I'm sure you remember this too, because I remember it so clearly. It's very tempting to just picture yourself like achieving this beautiful dream. It's so beautiful. You just think that's what I want. That's for me. But I would say that's similar to looking at, like a movie star and being like, oh, I'm going to star in a Hollywood movie. It's like, yeah, well, it looks very fun, but only some people get to have that, like it's a destiny thing to some degree. So by all means, pursue it. By all means, work hard, go for it. I tell everybody, go for it. But I also say, but be okay with, that not being your story. It's okay. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means you discovered that your joy was something else,
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, I love that. Let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about business. So you went to school for marketing. You have your BA in business.
Yeah, I actually didn't go to school for marketing. I went to school for business administration. I ended up taking a job in marketing right after. Marketing ballet is hard though. I mean, I would rather market something that like is popular.
Okay, no, let's get into this. Tell me, this is such a good statement. Why is it hard to market ballet?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. The biggest problem I find that I come up against even to this day is that it doesn't feel, and again, the people who love ballet from birth, if you're in it, That, I mean, that's like selling ice to Eskimos. Like, that's easy. But the culture at large is not comfortable, in my opinion, with dancing. I mean, you could argue with me and saying, oh, well, why is So You Think You Can Dance so popular? Why are Dancing with the Stars so popular? And my answer to that is because there's an element of competition in those that allows someone to feel more comfortable watching it. But if you remove the competitive element, people are like, I don't get why I'm looking at this. Like, I don't understand I don't understand this. So then I don't want to watch it because I don't understand it. Throw in a competition and now I understand. Okay, there's a winner and there's a loser. So the struggle is if you're not putting ballet out there in a competitive way with a winner and a loser, then people just don't know what to do with it, And again, I'm not speaking about like the people who are dancers or have been dancers but the vast culture, it's hard to break through that lack of education. So, the answer is not simple because it really gets back to something that is deep in our culture, a deep systematic appreciation for arts for the sake of arts. And I could go on all day about my opinion about why there should be more support for the arts. Because for me, it is actually quite close to why you would tell people to go to church. Like why does especially in the South, it's like everyone's like, there's a church on every corner. Everyone's telling you go to church, Christian. And I'm a Christian, so I have faith in my life. But it's just interesting to me that I'm like, for me, the journey that I take in my spiritual life is very similar to the way that I feel when I'm involved in my art form. It's very close. There's a very close relationship. And so why is it that we can talk about, as a culture, we can talk about things that are more spiritual or religious in nature, but you take it just a hair over to something that you can't, define as clearly because it's just, there's no words for it, but take it to an art, which is just an expression of the human, like these profound human experiences and these profound human commonalities that we have, love, just understanding self, experiencing self, going there, finding beauty in the human. And it's like, people just can't comprehend it. It's like, but it's the same thing as church. To me, it's the same thing. It's like, you want to talk about, elements of faith. Well, let's talk about elements of art. It's just as important to me, but it doesn't feel like the culture gets that. They're like, no, there's spiritual world, there's competition, there's sports, there's money. We don't understand art. And I'm like, oh, to me, it's just so powerfully important as a human being. And I think so other cultures, I mean, you obviously aren't originally from the States and you've had more international exposure. I have not had as much international exposure, but I like to believe that there are other cultures that it's not so complicated. It's like, oh yeah, art is really important. It's just like a fact that's what you would do, is you would honor the arts and the artist. The artist is as important as anyone. But here, it just doesn't feel that way. It feels like we can't sell it. We can't package it. We can't help people understand when there's no culture of support underneath that. That's my opinion. I mean, that's been my experience, is that I can talk to people, but at the end of the day, they don't quite understand, for the most part, why. I will say this though, there are a few that do. I have like board members here at the company that I work for and some donors who were not dancers. They're not artists. They were successful in business, and yet they give every year. They come back and they go, we get what you're doing and we value it and we support it. So I shouldn't say it's not that there's nobody. It feels like a very few people, comparatively speaking, to other ventures that are easier to sell, easier to understand.
Okay, can we unpack this? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you know so I love the analogy of competition, the hero and the victim, right? It's very easy to understand. This is why sports has such a huge, large audience, which is, so I understand all of your objections, and I'm a big believer in how can we? Asking the question, okay, we now know where we're at. We know it feels like it's hard to sell. We know that from the top there isn't enough support financially or in any other way. We know that people can't relate. What are we going to do about it? How can we make it more relatable? How can we gain more support? How can we build our own support system in the arts, for example? How can we bring in more of the younger audiences so that they can relate to it? You know, when I was growing up, and I'm talking about like the European culture, it is a completely different upbringing. Sports in Europe is one thing, and it has its fans and it has its following. Okay. But so do the arts. And it was because of accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the theater at 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
We went every month. And if I wanted to go more often, and that was a drive, it was an hour drive each way. I didn't care. Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah.
$20. That was it.
Yeah. See, but this is the thing. And this is what that's why it's so complicated, is that you, it boils down to money. You know, it always boils down to money. And it's like, so for me, well, I should say in education, but it's like they're so linked, because when I think about, you know, the answer to the problem, it would be nice if the public school system had a better way of exposing kids to the arts. And I know that there are programs, but it always just feels like the last, you know, it's the last priority. And I would just flip it and say, you know, what if we tried, you know, we have all these cultural problems, we have all these issues, what if we tried flipping the system and putting arts and art concepts and creativity at the front, and then fill in from there, and just play it out for 50 years and see what happens. And if I'm wrong, then I'll, you know, fine. But I would say what is wrong with the concept of valuing human expression and creativity and teaching the value of other people's, you know, expression? I think you're going to end up with a more empathetic and intelligent group of people over time. And Americans, I mean, right now, that's what we're struggling with. That's our number one issue, is that we have a whole bunch of people who are basically fairly uninterested in listening to each other. They're not particularly creative at problem solving, and they just want to like act like a toddler all the time. And I'm like, okay, so we actually have solutions to this. If you would go to the artists of our country and ask them if we have problems like this in our art forms, we'd say no, because we just don't think that way. We don't function that way. And I'm not saying we don't have our own problems, but I'm just saying that there's an inherent human value in what we're doing. So, you know, whether it's a tendu or, you know, explaining the color red that you chose for a painting, it doesn't matter what the art form is. That is a hugely important thing for us to be teaching in schools. And so I think if we were to start there, then what would happen over time is you would have the art form itself, the whole system would begin to support itself in a way that would make it healthy, as opposed to what's happening now. And what's happening now is you end up going back to this idea of like an elite and exclusive and private club mentality. And that nobody wants that. Nobody likes that. But the reason it's happening is because it's a survival thing. It's like, there is no alternative. I have to raise the money. I have to get the money, you know? And so for us to exist, I have to get the money. And I wish I didn't have to do it in the way that I did, and the way I'm doing it. I wish that there was just an inherent value system in our culture that made ticket prices come down and make it more accessible and all of that. So, I mean, that's why I say it's complicated, because it's like there is a solution, but it's kind of a long-term solution. It's not a quick solution. And I don't know who that powerful voice is that's going to be able to actually make that happen. You know, it's not just one voice. It'd have to be a team of voices, but I don't know how that, maybe I'll work on it someday. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, my journey's not done. I mean, obviously I'm passionate about this, and I do feel like once you feel like you've been in it long enough and seen enough angles, then maybe you can, help. Maybe I can help.
I think we all can help.
Yeah.
It starts with talking about it and with asking different questions. I think just by putting the possibility out there, what would it look like if we would completely turn the education system upside down and make arts the number one priority, for example. I would say, hey, let's turn professional companies upside down and give the dancers what artistic directors receive in funding, in salaries, and see how an artistic director would show up with a low 5-figure 38-week contract. Right. And how dancers would show up and how they would invest in themselves if they would get high 6 figures, low 7 figures per year, 52 weeks, and have the money to invest. So right. Let's see what that will look like, for example. Right. And I have another thing. I don't know if you, Gordon sent this to me. In the New York Times, Mackenzie Scott has given away another huge round of funding to underfunded arts organizations, Alvin Ailey, Dance Theater of Harlem, $10 million, okay? Which is like in itself, she is so generous and she understands and she sees where this is all going, okay? I'm gonna ask you this question. I understand that getting these kind of funds is great. It is a short-term solution though, because in a year or two, they're going to be at zero again. Yes. So my question is, and I am a dreamer, I am a visionary, and I know there is a way. We just have yet to ask the right questions. What could we do with $10 million and even half of that to actually make money? Like, what avenues are there? And even if it's just compound interest, how can we, even though you're a non-for-profit organization, how could this money be invested to make lots of babies? So in 2 years, you don't have to go again and ask for money.
Well, I mean, how would I do that?
Yeah, let's do stupid ID time. Brilliant ID time, actually. In fact, it's not stupid.
Well, I would say this. So it's totally doable. It just requires very, very wealthy people to set up like funds that the company would then just, half of your business model is a business. So like, even though we're a not-for-profit, I mean, I have to earn the tuition and, sell the tickets and do all that for the earned revenue. And that part, for the most part, should be able to work as a normal business without relying on donations. You know what I'm saying? Like, you shouldn't be relying on donations to operate. You need to be able to rely on donations to continue to elevate or do performances, the add-ons, that kind of thing. But so you should have a business model that part of it is self-sufficient and runs, and it's because of supply and demand. You're not hurting anybody, you're not overburdening anybody. It just, this is what we would expect to pay in the marketplace. This is what we pay, it works. But there's always going to be, in a ballet company, there's always going to be, thousands of dollars above and beyond that you do have to raise, because there is no earned way to achieve that unless you could get it from interest. So if you said, okay, Sarah, we're going to put, $10 million in this account, your budget is now dependent only on the interest from that account and the money that you earn, then that's the budget that I work with. And so if you have $1 billion in an account, then maybe the New York City Ballet or these big companies that have huge budgets, maybe their trust fund, well, I'm not even the language for it, but whatever it is that's sitting there, that's generating interest, just pours into their budget. They can still do all the things they're doing, but there's just this large sum of money sitting there. It really still, it kind of is like, I mean, I guess what the alternative would be to have something that you're producing that's earning that kind of money. But I don't see, unless you're getting out of the business of ballet and going into the business of something else, I have yet to figure out what you could produce that would sell. I mean, birthing a secondary company would be a completely different thing for a ballet company to do. Like I can't think of
So
it.
I'm going to challenge you right now. So think outside the box, like super, super big. And I think birthing another company would actually just having an LLC on the side that feeds your non-for-profit. And we don't have to get into this. You and I can do this offline. I love the thinking that you're getting into. It is, we're in this, we have the money, we're going to live off of the interest, and that's our budget. But how can we use the money to make more money? As in not only having it sit there, but to produce more and more and more, make more babies over the years, being able or using parts of it to come up with, let's say, different marketing strategies that then will bring in more people into the community that will support. Mm-hmm. Moving into a business model doesn't mean, and you and I talked about this, there's always will be people out there that want to give, because that brings them joy, that makes them fulfilled, that is their jam, and that can still exist. What I'm saying is relying only and solely on of those people that are there that want to help is like having just one stream of income in today's market. Right.
But right now it's the only way that it's done. And
I understand it is the only way. So this is why we have to think.
Right. So, but you're suggesting like a business model that would be very, very difficult for a company, a nonprofit to do, because
why is it difficult?
Well, for a number of reasons. Part of it is that even though you're relying on donations, that is the way that wealthy people want to use their money. It works. It's like me asking, let's say you're a very wealthy person. I'm asking you for money. You're helping my organization, but you're also being helped. So for me to now say, okay, no longer do I want to rely on your donation because I'm going to do this instead, I've actually prevented.
But that's not what I'm saying, though. I said that we want to actually have those people come in and give money. But let's just play this game out. I can use that money and reinvest it and make more money and have the same benefits of getting, not having to pay taxes on it.
Right.
Yeah. So it is not, I have other ways on moving my money around to not pay taxes on it. I don't necessarily have a non-for-profit organization be my only way of having a tax write-off. So there are many other ways.
But if I'm a nonprofit and I have a nonprofit status by saying that this is what I'm doing, I'm providing this service and this service and this service, but then I have another business that's actually profiting that is not these things, I may lose my nonprofit status.
You don't. Because the nonprofit has nothing to do with the for-profit. The for-profit can actually feed the non-for-profit. As in donating. You want to keep that non-for-profit status because it has lots of great benefits, as in you pay less for theaters, yes, you have those benefits, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, we do, but I think that's my understanding of the nonprofit is that you are operating in a certain way that they understand that you deserve that status. And if you do something that now is going to take you outside of that, then you're going to lose your nonprofit status because you're no longer operating as a nonprofit. You're now, you could say, well, what if you just started selling t-shirts, and that's just a new revenue stream? I would say that's probably fine. They're not going to care about that. We sell t-shirts. They're not coming after us for that. But if I started making, so much money and doing so much work that it was really just feeding, I don't know. I guess I see what you're saying. It's like it would be a nonprofit in the sense that no individual is profiting. I guess my feeling would be it would take so many resources to birth a second company that it blows my mind. Like if you said, Sarah, okay, you're going to start doing X, Y, and Z to earn, an extra $300,000 a year in revenue to support the nonprofit.
Yeah.
I would be like, okay, but how am I gonna do that? Like, how am I gonna start a company? It would just be like starting a new company for the benefit of the nonprofit, but I can't imagine what that company would be. Like, it just
Okay, so you are totally into how and how's it gonna work, and this is where we get so overwhelmed and moved into I mean this with love, it's not possible.
No, it is possible. It's just hard. And here's the thing, it's less efficient for me.
Well, so you thinking you have to do it. You think that you have to implement. You think you have to do it all by yourself.
There's no money. There's no money to hire a person.
Oh, no. Yes. Okay. So you and we're going to talk offline. There's always a way. I am so grateful for you for going down that road with me.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I will say that I think there's a reason. I mean, again, I'm only executive director of a small nonprofit.
Don't underestimate. You're not only.
No. But I was going to say that there's probably executive directors of much larger organizations who probably would be able to speak into this in a much more powerful way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like maybe I know from my little corner of the world why this works and why I would be fearful to change it by taking on a whole new business model. But I would bet that if at the higher end with the more professional experienced companies and business managers, that if they haven't done it, there must be a reason that they're not doing it, unless they are doing it. And maybe they are. Maybe they secretly have like LLCs that are pouring into them. They could be. They're still asking for money. They still seem very needy. I don't know. It's just the way it's done. It's so hard to think outside. It's just hard to think outside of what is known and what works. So I don't know. Okay. I would be scared. I think, to mess with the model too much. But I do like the idea of, making your money work for you. It sounds very ambitious. I will say it's interesting though, and I will add this. Sorry, my phone is blowing up. It's making buzzing noises. I will say this. I work in the film industry on the side, and there is a conversation happening right now about the nature of the nonprofit that I run, and could they be involved in the film project as a potential investor and beneficiary of the film. Does that make sense? Like, this is the first time that this has come up where we're actually having conversations about, could a project, an artistic project, be born out of a nonprofit that potentially would be a revenue stream if it were to sell, to Netflix or whatever. So that is the concept. I mean, that's kind of what you're suggesting, is that there could be ways to produce something, an asset, like a Netflix, whatever.
An asset, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That you would then profit from. So, I mean, I guess in a way I'm already exploring it with that conversation, but here's the thing. Even in that conversation, I have been very fearful, because even though it's a great idea on paper, there is something about involving something as delicate and precious as this organization that has taken years to build up a reputation and years to do what it's doing well, and is a finely tuned, well-oiled machine, and going into a project or a venture that has risk associated with it, which all businesses have risk associated with them, that is not it's not in the control. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's a new idea. And so it's been discussed, but it's very likely that it's not going to go forward with the nonprofit part because it's so outside the box. And it's not even me deciding. That's like a higher up decision. But that's, I guess what I'm saying is, there are ways to produce art that sell, but involving a delicate ballet company in it can seem very scary. I think it's partly because of the nature of how hard it is just to survive now, that you feel like, I mean, I guess it'd be like, you know, going up to a homeless person and saying, I'm going to give you a mansion. Like, you can't, like, you don't know what to do with it. Like, it's like, I don't know if I even want a mansion. I think I just want to stay homeless, because that's scary. Like, there is an element of when you've been in need and when you've been dependent for so long, it's very hard to think, oh no, there's another business model that could actually work. It's like, I don't think that I can, I live in this world, you know, and I have lived my life in the world of the nonprofit that relies on donations. I've never worked in a nonprofit that actually generated a secondary revenue stream that could support the nonprofit to the tune of, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay, this is so good. Thank you for that. This is where the analogy of the thermostat and the thermometer comes in so beautifully. Thank you for making that analogy with the homeless person and then mention the reason why most people that win in a lottery spend all their money within like 3 years and end up the way they started off was because they have their thermostat set at a certain temperature. And they've never broken through that glass ceiling. They've never raised their temperature, not their ability, but their own belief system. Okay. And I think if we would raise the temperature, not the temperature, but the thermostat for the arts and say, hey, yes, it is scary. Yes, we've never done it before, but what if? And the power of asking these questions. Just because we've done something for a long time and it has been working and it's comfortable and it's familiar, doesn't necessarily mean it will consistently work the same way. Like if we're looking at history of whenever we had any kind of economical reset happening, what that actually meant to any kind of arts organization. You said it is that consistent survival. This is how we survive. We're in a surviving state of mind. Mm-hmm. Look at our artists. They're consistently in a survival state of mind. Mm-hmm. And this kind of thermostat is set at survival. Mm-hmm. But if we were to move the needle and move it to thriving, what would that mean for everybody involved? What if dancers wouldn't have to have free roommates? What if they could actually invest into themselves and into other avenues that when they get out of their performance life, they are set without starving themselves?
Well, I mean, it would change everything. I mean, it would change our culture. That's what I was saying about the education. Like if we did value artists, if we could provide opportunities for actually making a living in fields like this, everything would change in our culture. Like there would be such a ripple effect. Again, I don't know how. I don't know where that money comes from until you figure that out. And if you figure that out, by all means, let me know. I'm willing to try. I'm a little gun shy because of, again, the nature of need. But the truth of the matter is that from the get-go, young dancers are told that this is a scary line of work and you probably shouldn't do it. You know, there's a million other things you should do, but this is not the thing that you should do. That's the message from the beginning. But most of the time, there's a few parents who don't say that. There's a few parents out there who will say, you know, follow your heart and who knows what will happen. But there's a lot, even of those parents, there's still a little chaser to that message, which is, but, you know, get a degree or do this or that. There's always some language in there that is fear oriented. And so I think that is genuine concern. That is not, people don't say that because they want to plant fear. I think they just genuinely feel like there's no evidence that this is going to work in a way that is going to be easy for you or that's going to lay out a path in front of you. I mean, one of the things I used to envy the most about people who didn't work in the arts, and I would frequently look at like doctors or, you know, other hard occupations that take training and years and talent and education. And I would say, it's not that I'm working any harder than those people. They're working very hard. They're dedicating their lives to something. It's the same kind of track. The difference is that they have a track. It's like you do this and then you do this, and you have instructions on like exams that you have to pass and get a certain score on to get to the next place, And these paths are laid out. And in the arts, it's just, it's like, you're just on your own, you're so lonely, and you're told this is a bad idea in the first place. So it's like there's not a lot there to uplift and support. And so what you're describing is an environment in which there would be a path, because there would be money at the end, and not even wealth, just security. So paths are built when there's a destination that's worth going to. But when you're in the woods and they're like, I could send you out that direction, but it's just, there's nothing to look at up there. There's no view, or there's no, waterfall or whatever. No one's going to beat a path to that, because it's just woods, and that's what it is to be an artist. You're going into the woods, and there's no one that beat a path before you, really. And that's so hard and scary and lonely. But I think an artist's heart says, I don't really care if there's a waterfall at the end. I like the woods. I enjoy the woods. So I'm going to go in the woods, and I'll just figure out what's out there. There's no path. So maybe there is something out there. And, and I'll be the one to discover it. So the inherent joy of that is why we do it. But it's hard to expect the culture to change when there is no guarantee at the other end of it.
What guarantees do you have? Because I find guarantee is, and we're going to round this up, guarantee or having security or guarantees in life is such a, I want to say, fake kind of model that we are chasing, because nothing is guaranteed. The only thing that is really guaranteed is that one day we're all going to go.
Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I feel like I won the lottery of life with the parents that I have, because they just supported. And it was like, they just didn't provide any reason for me to have fear of anything, really. So I do have fear. Clearly, I have fear of changing the business model. So I do have fear, but it's like, I think for me, it's just been a matter of saying, you just go forward, and if you don't function with fear, then, you just, I don't know. I guess I'm getting a little off topic, but there's no guarantee. But if you're not functioning from fear, then it doesn't matter anyway. Does that make sense? Like, am I answering the question? I don't know if I am, but it's like, there's no guarantee. If you're looking for a guarantee, then maybe you're afraid that you're not going to get something. But for me, fear and guarantee is related, because it's like, if you don't have fear and you don't worry about anything, then the guarantees are relevant. You just go, So I just feel like my parents planted something in me that gave me the ability to not have anxiety and fear. And so I don't have guarantees in my life, but I don't have worry about that either. I do. And sadly, the sad reality is I do know people who have died very quickly and very suddenly, and not from long illnesses, just, accidents. And when you've had that experience, it does make you realize that, like, to spend too much time worrying is such a waste, so.
Worrying is, who said that? Jen Sincero. She said, worrying is like praying for the wrong stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't worry at times, but I also catch myself and say, what is it going to do? Mm-hmm. What is that really going to produce? So let me ask you that last question. Looking at all of your experiences that you have compounded over the last 3 decades and more, what would you tell your 16-year-old self if you had like 5 minutes with her?
I should have prepared for this, because I've seen you ask other people this question and I didn't even think about it. I think I would just tell her that she is actually smarter than she thinks she is, you know, because I spent many, many years just completely discrediting my own thoughts, thinking, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And the truth is, I mean, I'm not a genius, but I'm plenty smart, you know, I'm plenty smart. I don't lack in, like, I shouldn't have been worried about how smart I was. I should have just been, I don't know, confident in the intelligence that I had. So
confident in you, right?
She wouldn't have listened to me. If I could go back and tell her that, she would have been like, you don't know what you're talking about.
You know, that is so interesting. You're the first person who said that. Like, she wouldn't have listened to me.
Right.
And I was asked the same question not too long ago. And I was asked, what would you do to make her listen? And the things that I came up with, because at that moment I was emotionally so involved, to say, oh, I would make her sit down. I would make her understand to the point that she could repeat it back to me, because that would, you know, saved her from a few detours, let's just say. Yeah.
Right. You know, it's amazing how powerful those little voices are in our heads. And that's the thing, as a parent too, it's like, I can't control those little voices in my kid's head. I try to, but they're there, you know, they have little voices, and I know they do, because they'll say things to me and I'll be like, that's the little voice. And we got to get that voice out of here. But that's just part of our, I think, our journey. And, you know, I try not to have any regrets. I have a few, but even those, I try to spin it positive, to say it was for a reason. I was supposed to learn that, and it was painful, but I had to learn that. So,
yeah.
No.
Thank you for sharing that.
I want to say in conclusion too, that I just really appreciate what you're doing. And this has been kind of an all over the map conversation, but I do think, and I hope that your listener and that any young dancers, or, you know, young professional dancers that are listening to you and taking advice from you, I hope they hear that there's advocates, you know, that there are people further down the road who are still passionate and are still dedicated to this art form and to the future of this art form, and to the future dancers, that, you know, even though we haven't solved all the problems, there are lots of people out there who care. Lots of teachers, lots of directors, lots of choreographers. I mean, this is an art form that is really thriving in the way of heart and passion. We have problems figuring out how to fund it and support it for the artist's sake, but they shouldn't feel alone, and they shouldn't feel that there aren't people trying to advocate. It will not come quickly or easily, and the path may be difficult, and we can all talk about, obviously for an hour, we can talk about our paths, but I just want young people to know that they're not alone, you know, and hopefully they're listening to you, because you're giving a lot of really powerfully good messages to young people to think about.
Thank you, Sarah. And that's true. Nobody's alone. Sometimes it's easier to think that we're alone, because then we can just curl up on the couch and not really feel into it and lean into it and look for solutions. And I've been there in so many situations, but believe me that the community is truly the healing that we all are looking for in different layers, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your time. That has been filling my cup up so much today. Thank you for being here. And yes, we are going to do this again and digging into.
And I'll keep thinking about your concept, your business model concept. You've challenged me.
And you gave me the best opposition ever, because that's, Rise Media is exactly the solution to. But I don't have yet heard that mindset. And for me, it is such a big gift, even though it makes me uncomfortable. It is the biggest gift you could ever give me. So thank you for that too.
Well, you're welcome.
Okay. Mwah. Thank you, my darling. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. If this message resonates with you, please pass it on to someone who needs to hear this right now. And if you like what you've heard, your feedback will go a very long way. If you just take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, that would mean the world to me. Till next time, point at yourself to rise to all that you are capable of.